I mean, loads of people have said it, but Benicio del Toro has talked about like we're always different characters.
Yeah.
And we're always playing a certain character, right?
Absolutely.
Because you play a certain character with your doctor or your mum or a version of yourself. You know, I'm sure there's a Jungian version that's more interesting than what I've just said. Or
Uta Hagen talks about it a lot.
Yeah. So you're playing different versions of yourself so that there's you leaving the voicemail because that's almost like an imprint in time. Your performance is then, how am I coming across?
There's you doing a podcast.
This is me doing a podcast.
This is me doing a podcast. Welcome to the Actors Yard podcast with me, Dean Graham, and today I am joined by the wonderful Ben Lambert.
Yeah,
Hi, Ben. I paused there because I was like, do I go actor Ben Lambert?
Yeah, earlier you
But I didn't want to go through your entire CV of you as a human being because that's for you to divulge, I think.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are you?
I did bring my CV here.
Did you?
To read.
And headshot.
To read. And I'm going to describe my headshot. Oh no, I can hold it up to the camera.
And we can just by comparison, we'll see if you're really that person.
Yeah.
Anyway, who are you, Ben?
It's actor.
When you meet people like, at a social event gathering, and people are like, "What do you do?" Is there ever any reticence?
Yeah, there's definitely reticence to say I'm an actor. I think it's probably reticence for everyone, isn't there, to be defined solely by what they do.
Yeah,
it's a useful way in.
Totally,
isn't it? Everyone. That's why
we
all love and hate it.
I hate asking it, but it's the easiest question to ask.
To find a way.
What do you do
to connect? If you say something else like, what's your greatest fear? When did you last fall over? Do you like New York baked cheesecake? Like you're going to come across as, strange.
Legend.
What's your strangest dream you've had recently? Like,
I think people should do that though. I think people should break the ice like that.
I'm going to a press night tonight, which the way I roll that off the tongue, like I'm always doing that, but I am doing that tonight.
Nice.
And I'm going to challenge myself to try an opening line of. I would just not even the ones I've just said now. Whatever comes into my head,
yeah.
Just go. Do you like velvet? It's a material that we know. No, I can't.
What I really would love is for this to happen, like during the handshake moment.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ben. What's your greatest fear? One of the sensations that I felt when I met you is that you were.
You felt what the fuck?
No,
is going on.
Who the fuck is this guy? No, I felt like you were a very present person, a very present soul that I was just like, and I really admired that when I first met you. I was just like, it's so great. And I remember because obviously, you directed me in an immersive show, which we can talk about later. But I remember I was, for whatever reason, going through quite a difficult, it's been long week of rehearsals or whatever. And I just felt quite overwhelmed. And I just remember being on my own and then you coming into that space. And there was just that moment of like, I just felt like you were there. And that just made me, I just bawled my eyes out. I remember that really, really clearly, just like crying on you. It was like 30 seconds. But just that I think that release was kind of induced by the fact that you were really there. And like you were really, when you asked me if I was okay. And it really felt like you were asking me if I was okay. Do you know what I mean? And like not in a kind of like, not as a platitude, just you were actually genuinely asking me in that moment. And so it was a really beautiful moment for me. It was one of my favorite memories of doing Money Heist, the immersive
That's good.
Show. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that with me. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a good laugh to say after Money Heist, the immersive show.
Yeah.
Because it was for those that don't know, Money Heist, Netflix, big show. This was the immersive show of that Netflix show. So, perhaps not high art, but high intensity because there was there was a rehearsal room with 52 people in, and a short rehearsal time and a lot of energy in that room. There's a lot of human beings coming together at a strange time as well with COVID happening, really. Yeah, I think I felt very aware of that responsibility of holding a space. I really enjoy the process of directing and holding space. I'd never held a space for that many people and wasn't quite, sure how to.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, revealed their vulnerability at times, different times. And it was a privilege to try and hold that space for everyone in whatever state they're in. There was a real openness, to the actors who were like, you have to be if you're an immersive, really. There were some people who found it easier and more difficult at different times, but you have to be very open because the audience are right there all the time, right next to you.
Yeah.
It's a real balancing act, I think, of the skill of the actor, which is to have a hard but incredibly sensitive, vulnerable skin.
Definitely.
Like to be both those things,
Yeah.
which is required of you, I think, on stage, on camera, and off. Like the career is constantly buffeting you around.
Have you ever performed in an immersive show?
I think I stepped in for an actor who was missing on another show that I was directing.
Yeah.
And I loved it because it felt a bit like it felt the closest, apart from probably the closest to play that I've ever like when you're a kid play. In that particular immersive show I jumped into, I was dressed as a soldier and had a gun, and I think I shot the gun. It was a pretty like health and safety not so good probably.
Yeah.
There was a lot of blood flying around, and like it was a creepy, scary. It was pretty scary. And I think at one point in that show, some actor was not on the show I was doing that I stepped in for, but a show that I was directing the show, and this actor got bit by a zombie. So this gives you an idea of what the show was about.
Yeah.
And an audience member who was so into it grabbed a frying pan that was like a prop in the room and swung the frying pan, hit the actor in the head, and the actor like broke the fourth wall, which is always thin anyway in an immersive show, but it's right there. And he went, "You need to go." And the guy was mortified and left. And he hung around till the end of the show, which, like a lot of these immersive shows run.
Yeah.
So he waited to the end to go, "Look, I'm really sorry." He was mortified because he'd just been so caught up in it, this audience member, that he picked up the frying pan to kill this guy, this actor, before he turned into a zombie. No one, reminds him that it is a show. And he's not going to.
Yeah, I feel safer as an actor than an audience member. I think because I remember I got invited to go to the industry and to an industry showing of Saw, the new Saw experience,
right.
And I was like, I don't want to go because I don't know how. I mean, I'm not unsafe as a human being, but I just like you put in these extreme circumstances. My imagination's pretty potent. Yeah. And I was a bit like, I just don't want to have to negotiate that. That seems like an additional layer of stress for me. Whereas somebody who's like not particularly imaginative or whatever, and they can just go into that room and be like, that's really scary. What's next? Whereas I'm like, I'm in this room.
Being more fair to this anonymous person with little imagination, you could give them a compliment. We could say they have better self-control than you.
Yeah.
They have amazing imagination. They just don't want to punch anyone. But
totally.
Well,
I'm just scared easily. Okay.
Yeah, no, but some people, absolutely, they go along to be titillated and pushed into that place. But if you're already sensitive to that, I mean, you asked about, I mean, what you said, did you? You said you've got a kid. Was the statement, not a question. I think the violence, like that, you do become sensitized to violence in a different way. I'm jumping there away from zombies into But watching. Different people have different sensitivities, It's not like I've become at times like certainly my partner like I don't think I want to watch this.
Yeah,
the cruelty or the violence. So
I think I've become more and more sensitive as I've gotten older. Yeah. I think there was a period of being incredibly sensitive as a youth, like really young, sort of 10 area. Then teenage years, completely desensitized. And then progressively, I've become more and more sensitive, I think.
Yeah, although maybe it's not desensitized and you're a teenager. You just want thrill. You want excitement. You want You want the controversial. You want to push the boundaries. There's probably like that's the thing, sometimes I think I've outgrown something. Like as in I've reached a level of maturity or wisdom, or whatever. It's like, no, you've probably your taste has just changed. You're you're growing, but it's just a different phase, like different, you know. I watched Sonny, my son, watching like cartoons, and I'm like, if it says PG, sometimes we're like, oh, you know, they can watch a PG, and he's like, either the plot is like way too complicated, and he's just like doesn't know what is going on, or it's a bit too scary for him, and he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, right. It's sort of an inbuilt thing, you know? If we kept whacking him in front of like 15s or whatever, maybe he'd slowly, I mean, apart from be mentally scarred for life, he'd probably build up a resistance to it. But there's a natural process of where you're sensitive to things. That said, Mark Commode loves a horror. And I'm less into.
I think I still love a horror, but I'm much more apprehensive about watching a horror than I was when I was younger.
I like a horror. I don't like the torture porn ones where you kind of like watch someone like used to be, it's probably less so now, a woman, but it used to be a woman. It's probably now like a man or a bunch of kids or whoever go into a wood and then, or into a abandoned house and then be hacked to pieces.
Like the Saws.
Like the Saw,
like
maybe.
Hostels.
I don't know. I've not Hostel, I think, as well. Although I've not watched many because I don't like
I actually never watched Hostel. Yeah. I knew about this, like a scene in it where someone gets their Achilles heel sliced. And I was like, I don't want to see that. So I think I skipped it because of the Achilles heel thing. I'm really curious about, I always find it really amazing and really impressive when actors manage to have a life. And you're married and you have a child and you have a home. And how much was that a priority to you? Because I think that we can, as actors, we can get a little bit obsessed, especially if, the work that you want or the work that you ideally want isn't kind of coming your way readily. I think it's very tricky to try and prioritize having a life outside of work. So how did you kind of create that balance?
I would like to say some recipe now, or set of ingredients, or a bullet list that would be helpful for anyone trying to strike that balance.
That's what I expect.
That's what you're after. I'll send it in an email. We can get some AI to make it sound like I said it in the moment.
Easy.
I think a lot of things that have happened, like, have sort of, you look back and go, how did that happen? I definitely had a moment when I was like, I want a relationship.
Yeah.
And then I want something more than just, short-term stuff. And then as for having a kid, I guess from a young age, always thought that would happen. And then you get older and you're like, it's not happening. You've got to participate in some way or make some intentions and moves towards that. So I don't know. I think having a kid has been amazing for me. And I just think it's an incredible privilege to be a parent, as well as an absolute chore, and also as something that's hilarious, and there's so many things. So it's such a trip that I sort of would recommend it to everyone. What else? Life. I also feel like life, it's the most important thing. Obviously, as what am I saying by those four letters? But when you, as a director, as an actor, being self-conscious about my stuff as well as looking at others, you're like, well, the most interesting things about people are what they bring and being occupied in their life and being present with it. And the occupation of being an actor is often challenging because it's pulling you out of the moment. You're worried about where your career is going, or where it's been, or where you can get your next foot on a ladder. And I think that can recreate a lot of tension, and that tension isn't helpful. For you as a creative, as a creature that comes in to play in whatever form. It has to have that quality of play. And play is quite hard if you're holding on and tense. And I don't know. Then I'm straying into just out of how to be the best actor as well. Because you can't be self-conscious about it. It can't be but you have to have that quality of play, and therefore the play and the creativity is about being active and creative in your life. And when I've brought things, when I've been in the sort of, I feel like I'm in the best play part of my life, it's when I've been actively involved in my life, whether that's creating a project. I did a project called the Listeners Project where we went into buildings that were going to get demolished, and before they got demolished, four directors would be given a chance to make a film, either on a floor, depending on how big a building it was, a room, or it's some pretty big buildings. There's BBC studios in White City that got demolished, or not all of it, but some of the studios got demolished. It's a massive building. So the directors got like an entire floor, or one director did a beautiful dance piece inside an old studio where they used to, part of the same studio, it was all one studio, just a huge building, where they used to paint the backdrops of sets. So you walk into this room, which itself, like if it was smaller, you would have kept it, it would have been listed, you would have put it in a museum or listed the building, but it was inside the bigger building that itself was like a massive studio hangar, like a behemoth of the building, like huge. But inside this one thing was like this huge room where they basically, the walls moved on all four sides, and there was a little Dalek thing in the middle, which apparently, I say Dalek thing, was actually apparently one of the inspirations for the Dalek. Because it was the set, they would paint the backdrops of all the sets on this thing, and you could move from that Dalek, and it still worked when we went there. You could move before it's demolished, you could move the walls up and down, and the entire room was like an old decorator's pair of shoes, like paint, just layer and layer of paint, because obviously they'd used the whole room. So every inch of this room was like probably incredibly toxic lead paint, but like it looked beautiful. It was like some like slightly monochrome, I suppose, Jackson Pollock kind of like,
but like an accidental Pollock.
Yeah, like an accidental Pollock in the, just like the biggest artist studio you'd ever seen. It was so huge.
Wow.
And all the walls moved, which was so much fun.
Did you film it?
They are different. I mean, I think we used to, it's been a while since we did one. I did one in a mannequin factory, did one in an old place that's been demolished since, near Spitalfields, where they filmed various things. Batman was filmed there. There's still there in another place we did where they filmed it, Inception and loads of stuff. The Man in the High Castle, and the new Batman down in what's it called? It's near the city airport. There's a big Millennium Mills. We filmed there as well.
Sick.
They haven't gone yet. Anyway, the reason why I'm diverting talking about that project, I was creating that because I was like, I want to create something.
Yeah.
And by being involved in creating, then like other work comes alongside it, but I'm no longer like laser beam, straitjacketed almost about it has to happen.
Yeah.
It's like,
and do you think that has an effect on the outcome?
Of the outcome of that work with the Listeners Project, say, or the outcome of my career as an actor?
Yeah, the acting career.
Yeah, I think so because I relate that to family life as well, because if you're busy with life, creating like your life as you want it to be, as you imagine it to be, you're like the little penguin in Wallace and Gromit building the train set in the way, like I'm going to build the tracks, like let's get involved.
Yeah.
Otherwise you get too into a kind of stasis, or at least I do. Like I can get really like, what should I do? What's the right thing?
Yeah. And I think that a lot of actors can get very much bogged down in laying the train tracks of their career rather than laying the train tracks of their life. And so that's the thing that I was getting at, was that like, I'm curious as to how much focusing on building your life can affect the kind of blessings that you receive in your career. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm being kind of loose when I don't know, I'm trying to steer clear of getting too woo-woo about it and being kind of like, the universe rewards whatever, sacrifice, hard work, confidence, those things. I don't know. But it is interesting. It is interesting. I always find it, amazing when actors manage to have lives as well.
The hard work thing is difficult as well. Like, there are a lot of actors out there, and it's a lot of, I don't know, following your joy. Like, You know,
Yeah.
what do you also want out of your, like, oh, brilliant, I did this job, I did that job. I know loads of actors who are doing really big, high profile jobs. They're not happy,
Yeah.
you know, or like I've just done a job, which is like, it's a good job, you know, but I spent a lot of time not there. I spent a lot of time not doing the job.
Yeah.
Because it was a TV thing, and there was a season whereby I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on board this for the entire season, but I'm not there.
You were wherever you were on location or wherever you were filming or at the studio, but you just went on set.
No, it wasn't even called to location. Wasn't even called to. So I had a contract for the year to work on that job, and I couldn't really do much else. I think I did a couple of other things that in the last year just gone. But it was limiting because your time has been bought by a job, and then you can't go off. And so, yeah, it's interesting when you know. And I.
So what did you do in between?
I was a dad.
Yeah.
I mean, I still am. Yeah, I was. That was great, but it's quite strange because you're like, oh, I'm. This is the thing, and I don't know when I'm going to go. I could go at any time, and you know, kind of in your block, you know, when you're called to go to film. Oh, this is your, you know, per block. So every like 4 or 6 weeks ahead, you generally speaking know what's happening.
Yeah.
No, yeah, but then you,
you
can't. It's hard to plan anything else. It remains hard to plan as it does just as much when you're not working. When you're wondering what to do with your time, or you're having to work and you're wondering about your shifts or your second job or your whatever it is.
It's really interesting as well because we have this rule and everyone talks about it. It's like if you want to book a job, book a holiday.
Yeah.
Right. People say this all the time. I feel like people say it so much that there has to be some truth in it. And I've done it. Like I've booked a holiday and been like, I can't wait to go on that holiday, and then booked a job. And had to move the holiday or whatever. But I think we spend a lot of time going, I'll book a holiday when I've done something that I'm proud of, or something that I feel like is like put me to the next rung on the ladder, or you know, I've done a satisfying project and I feel like I've worked. I will then reward myself with a holiday. And very often that doesn't come for a long time. And so you end up just wearing yourself out doing, you know, jobs that are going to kind of like sustain you, especially when you're living in London and everything's so expensive and you're working your way to live and you're tiring yourself out. And artistically, that's a really tricky place to be in. A lot of people say like the best art is done hungry. How do you feel about that?
The best artists are...
The best art is created when you're hungry.
When you're hungry. I mean, the Listeners Project, when I was doing that, which I don't know if it's great art at all, the idea of that was really to play. Someone sent me, just the other day, sent me an email saying, oh, I've just watched these films on, they're all online. And it was like, I've just watched some films on Listeners Project, and which ones did they watch? They're not all good, so I don't know which ones they were complimenting. But the idea of the Listeners Project was it was the creative play. It was not worrying about getting it right. And she said, oh, that's right. Yeah, it was the one at Millennium Mills, because she then said, I'm a softie, and this is one with a ghost. And she's like, oh, that's the one I like best. And I wrote back to say thank you, because I was really appreciated her enjoying all that, you know, which I think, what did I do? Oh, I directed one of them, of those four. But I was producing all of them. And so she was thanking me for that. And I said, oh, the being a softie is great. Because it reminded me of Leonard Cohen's, like, we all have cracks, but the cracks is where the light comes in. I'm paraphrasing a song of his, Anthem. And I looked it up, this anthem, that quote, to go, is that Leonard Cohen's? I feel like it's his. And I looked it up, and it is his, and it's in the song. And in that same song, he talks about, in that same little bit, 2 lines before the bit about let the lights let the crack in, and let the lights let the crack in? No, it's not right. The lights don't let the crack in, the cracks let the light in. He talks about, I suppose, the comparison with her with being soft, like being empathetic, being able to let something in.
Yeah.
If you're hard, you can't. And if you're, like going back to the acting, if you're tight, you can't. You're holding on too tight, you can't let things in. But also the quality of play in that Leonard Cohen quote, which I now have to look up, or it talks about things not being perfect, like to begin and to play now, which is what the Listeners Project was about. So I've gone on a train of thought here. So you said hungry, and I was hungry with Listeners Project. I was hungry with I am hungry with my career, but it can't be like a desperate hunger. It's the desire.
Yeah.
It's the kind of like, and that maintaining that place where you're playful. Like I've met actors who have that, and I have it too, but it sort of comes and goes. Perhaps it does for all of us. But I've met actors who are doing very well in their career, and not that everyone who does well materially, this is the answer, but they had this quality of brightness, of aliveness, of that desire and play for life, right?
Yeah.
Rather than that slightly hooded, haunted kind of thing of like, am I getting enough? It's quite me orientated, and it's quite, as opposed to just an expansive, let's play.
And I do think that that's, like you used the word desperation a few moments ago, and I think that that's a really good, because desperation is inherently very, it's very closed, isn't it? It's very intense, it's very linear. And it does kind of shut down your freedom and expanse and your ability to play, I think. I was watching Sunset Boulevard the other day. Have you seen this film? It's for a long time ago. I watched it a couple of times. I think it's one of my favorite films because it's absolutely batshit. But there is a quote in that where it was very similar to what I sort of paraphrased there. And the writer's agent says, the best art is made on an empty stomach. And I do, and I think that we have romanticized this idea of artists being hard up and not having enough money and not being particularly successful and, you know, being misunderstood and all of those things. And actually, I think it's really kind of toxic attitude that we layer on top of ourselves as artists. And I think it does shut us down, like creatively. We're become very insular and obsessed and intense when actually acting is shared, it's open, it's expansive, and it's flexible, and it's malleable.
Yeah.
Or the best is, I think, personally.
Yeah. But also, absolutely. Yes, and, yes, and like in your life, like I'm not always good at maintaining this and it's, it's a lofty aspiration, but I suppose you want to have that across the board in your life, to be playful, to be malleable, to have this desire for what you want in your life. Yeah. But not, it's a fine line, not so, I can get that. Yeah. Not turn it into a Gollum thing. Like life will bring you stuff, and like maybe it won't completely manifest in the way that you've done your secret chanting about what you want to come to you, and yet like to be an explorer and to be like, oh, this is the landscape of my life. And like
it's really tricky though, because I mean we are a results orientated society. Yeah. And so it's very difficult to be kind of like journey
society, do you? I mean, it's
no, of course not. It's just that thing's been reinforced.
Oh, absolutely. It's always reinforced. And you mentioned algorithms earlier. So as soon as you go on your phone, you're subjected to so much. There's so much outside influence coming at us. Yeah. But, yeah.
And we do. And obviously the mantra, it's the journey, not the destination, is, kind of perpetually regurgitated. But it's very hard I think that you have to hear something, depending on who you are or where you are in your life, you have to hear something many times to really take that thing on board or really embody that thing, It takes being told in a certain way or by a certain person or in a certain situation for you to really understand that thing. I think that learning is kind of cyclical. We always come back to the same lessons until we really learn them. Right.
Yeah, maybe. Certainly I agree. Yeah. Whether or not you said it became final when you said, until we really learn them. Yeah. As if then you're like, tick, no more circle on that one. Yeah. I don't even know if that's true.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
As in like, be nice if you did is completely assimilate a lesson. Yeah. But maybe it just comes round, or bigger circle, so you might not see it for a few years.
So the orbit just gets a little larger.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Instead of that turning circle of like, oh, I'm so indecisive, I can never decide this, and your indecision over that particular thing, or, I can't speak to an alcoholic or a drug addict's journey, but whatever it is, like, hopefully you leave these things behind, but they might manifest and bump up in the carpet in another way, and therefore you're still learning a different angle on a similar nuance of your personality, and the only thing that's final is death. That's like your you'll come to the end of your learning, but you'll still be assimilating these things unless you become Buddha or enlightened, you know, unless you overcome these things completely. Otherwise, the circles are always there. But I don't, you know, that's why I'm coming to this podcast and like, you know, I'm 42 at this point in my career. I've got done, you know, I can look at my CV, which I've still got here, and I'm going to read.
Yeah.
Just a moment.
Just a little extract.
Be a little story. You know, on some level, I've got a good CV. If I should put it next to someone else's CV, it's definitely not very good. I was once went to a firework display in Lewis, and was at the time a friend of mine was dating this actor, and a lot of my friends were like, who aren't actors at this particular friendship group, who aren't actors, were like, oh, look who it is. Look at this. And I was like, just relax. And then there were a few others, like there was a friend of mine who's a director who was a bit more cool about it, but there were a lot of people who were being like very much like, you know, bless this guy, he's probably used to it, but like he was suddenly a zoo animal amongst the group of people he was hanging out with because she was dating him.
Who is it?
Well, so I'm chatting to him and I know it's Jude Law, but I'm just like, I'm just going to chat to him. I don't, you know, he's an actor. I've worked with other actors of his level and he's in a social setting. I'm just going to, you know, so at some point we were next to each other and we started having a chat. And we're chatting for a bit and we're walking around and then his girlfriend comes up and goes, oh, Jude, this is Ben. Ben's an actor too. And I was like, oh no, don't do that. We were having a nice chat and now I suddenly feel like, he's, you know, like Ben's a president too, from like Joe Biden to the president of Luxembourg. You know, like, you're both presidents, you know, chat about the economy or, you know, foreign affairs. Like, no, we were doing fine without any of that. I told this story to two other actors the other day, actually. I guess that's why it's in my brain. And they went, president of Luxembourg? And I was like, what? I'm already doing myself down in this story. And they weren't happy that I called myself president of Luxembourg.
You didn't get president.
No, I think they were more like, you know, parish councillor or something. You know? So, and that's the thing, right? There's always going to be someone.
I met Jude Law on a set once.
Above you, you know.
I fucking hated it. Well, it was only because, basically, I got offered this job because I was looking for a money job.
I thought you were going right out there and saying you hated him.
No, he's really lovely. He's lovely. Yeah. But I needed some money and someone offered me a job in a props department on this film and Jude Law was directing a segment of this film. And so I met him on set and like, it was a laugh. The set was a laugh, but I hated being in that environment and not doing the job that I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah, right. I found that really tricky.
Proximity.
And I'd never done that before. Because I've never been like an SA. I've never been an extra. I've never worked on a film with a budget. As anything but an actor or a director. And I found that relationship very tricky. Because it's like you meet Jude Law on set and it's like, I want to meet Jude Law as an equal, as a contemporary, as a peer or whatever. Obviously he's a veteran and I'm, you know, who I am. But meeting him as someone who's working in the props department, I found really tricky. Because I felt like it was really at odds with who I actually am or what I actually am. And then it's going back to that thing we were talking about earlier of like introducing yourself and being defined by your career. Yeah. And I think I'm really guilty of that. I feel really guilty of defining myself as an actor and kind of above everything. I
mean, yeah, it's a problem for a lot of actors. I don't think all actors. I think some they are far more fluid with it, and I really admire that. They're kind of like putting it down, doing something else. You know, like, you know, particularly people who, you know, I like the idea of that the creatives who's just like 1 minute I'm sculpting and then I'm like an artist and then I'm releasing an album and you know then I'm you know that's or whatever you know like I guess you know Jeremy Renner's a property developer you know like people having different things and which I do too, but yes, you can become quite, I'm defined by it. But like, you know, without going back into, then this is not the podcast for it, but the spiritual aspect of like who you are, being defined by those things anyway is bullshit and boring and restrictive to you. So like, that's not to put it down and go, but it's so complicated for me to listen to what you're saying about you were in the role of you were in the prop department or, you know, I'm talking about being at the bonfire night, and there's Jude Law at that level of his career, and there's always going to be something you're dissatisfied about where you're at.
Yeah.
That you know, yeah. I don't know. I don't know where the train of thought goes really.
Yeah. This is the most cyclical episode of the Actor Child podcast that we've ever done as well.
What, throwing
Because
things
we
back
did
and
talk
forth?
about identity right at the beginning, and as in being defined by what do you do?
What do you do? Who are you?
Who are you?
Who are you?
Yeah.
I used to. Are we approaching the end?
Yeah, we kind of are.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I suppose that then, who are you? I used to have a problem with being asked when they used to the follow-up question. What? So often people say, "What have I seen you in?" Which is like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
What
I
have you
think
seen?
That was what I was
Let's
going to
sit
say
down.
earlier, was like the anticipation when you say there is a reticence about saying I'm an actor,
Yeah.
because the follow-up question is inherently,
Yeah.
what do I know you
What
from?
do I know
or
you
what
from?
I've yeah.
What will I've seen? And I'm like, well, let's sit down and talk about all the shows you've seen. Why do I have to like work out if you've seen me in something? But yeah, I mean, there was the other question where people say, what kind of actor are you?
Yeah.
I got that for a while, and I was like, what kind of actor? And I've done like, I used to be like, I've done radio, I've done a bit of like motion capture, I've done film, TV, theater, you just start listing all the stuff you've done. Or I don't necessarily, but in my head, I'm like, is that what they want? Is that what you want? What kind of actor? And I was like, well, yeah, what kind of actor? Like, what kind of actor do you want to be? Like,
It's a really fun question.
it's a fun question if you recoin it. Like, there are people I've admired who just follow their creative force, and like that is what excites them. And the industry can come along if it wants to or not, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it does. And people who they're kind of the bright sparks. People are for me, like, because if you follow a trajectory of I'm just going to follow the career of the industry, then a lot of that isn't very interesting.
It's really interesting because it's like I have a default answer to that question when people go, what kind of actor are you? I say, or they say, what kind of acting do you do?
Yeah.
And I always say, whatever they'll let me do is my default answer. And actually, it makes me think about the way that I make that statement. And actually, like, it's quite a limiting statement.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Even though, I have created my own projects, and, I've gone ahead and done other really interesting things.
Sure. It might not be a spell of incantation where you are casting yourself solely in that thing, but in their eyes in that moment, there's a spell to words, isn't there?
Of course, yeah.
And whatever they'll let me do is quite depowering.
I agree, yeah. Unempowering.
Well,
yeah,
you've made that.
No, that's what I mean. It's really interesting to reflect on it in that way. I'm going to cut that from my vocabulary, or I'll go. Now, Ben, we are coming towards the end of this podcast. We do have a little segment at the end of the Actor Child podcast, which we call the Proust-Pivot-Lipton questionnaire.
Okay.
I believe. So did you ever see Inside the Actors Studio?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's essentially a bastardization of Liv Lipton's questionnaire. He stole it from Bernard Pivot, and Bernard Pivot stole it from Proust, right?
Okay.
So it's like a few of their questions, and some are mine too.
Cool.
It's kind of like, it doesn't have to be like a quick fire thing. We can chat about it, but it's just a couple of little talking points.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
For the Proust-Pivot-Lipton questionnaire?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. What sound do you love?
The sound, genuinely, the sound of my son laughing is the best sound.
It's really interesting because I asked that question, and then immediately in my head I was was like, it's going to be.
Yeah, for sure. The best sound, my son laughing. I mean, as I say it to you now, it becomes like a lot of things in life. When you say the thing, it doesn't. Or I was going to cry.
Yeah.
And then it's just a thing I say about.
Yeah.
But it's true. I know because I nearly cried saying it.
Yeah.
And but like whenever we do these little things, when you ask someone about how's your day, or you go, I've had a really shit time, the feeling is there somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you can't hand it all over.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, how's your day? Oh, well, I've had a divorce, and I've been kicked out of my house, and then there's the feeling. We get a kind of signpost of the feeling. Signpost of the feeling. If you could feel what I feel about the best sound, it'll be your best sound too.
Gorgeous. What sound do you hate?
I don't know. What do I hate? Oh, the sound of my son whining.
Yeah.
Like the demanding whine of I want this immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty awful. That's definitely one of my worst sounds.
Yeah.
And I think it's appropriate for those people thinking of having kids, and obviously for anyone who does, they'll know that. Like, they're a wonder and a joy. Like, they bring the most incredible joy to your life. But also sometimes I'm like, I hate you. It's brief and like,
And
yes, and I hope.
obviously, like you don't ever get any closure from that because they'll never understand.
Yeah.
They don't understand.
I hope behind that, I hate you is love.
Yeah.
But I couldn't say for sure. In the moment, I just
Great.
shut up screaming.
Moving on from that anger, what's your favorite curse word?
Cunt.
Cunt. Yeah, great. What's your favorite quality in another human being?
Favorite thing about human beings?
No, like in
person?
another person. When you meet
In
another person, what's that quality that you're like, that you look for? Because I think that people kind of like look for qualities in other human beings that they like.
Yeah, I suppose.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then it's also, yes, you do. You're going to go, to a certain extent, you know, like, look at your partner. They look a little bit like you often, like, or look at the things you like in them. Maybe at least at first, you'd be like, oh, you're trying to like a bit like me, or you laugh at my jokes. You know, I said like, they like me was the first one, but you know, also stuff that surprises you. You're like, oh, you're like that, and that's kind of gross to me, but I'm attracted to it. You know?
Yes.
I suppose their vulnerability when someone. I think you recognize this as an actor when you're in a rehearsal room and certainly doing some mise and stuff, or like seeing someone's vulnerability and seeing who they are beneath the masks. That glimpse you see, that in between the swapping of masks, maybe this is my actor mask and there's my friend mask, and then like, and there's my, I've just seen my bank manager mask, or I got off the phone to my mum, or, you know, like, and then you just see beneath all those masks, that bit, that like through all those armors. Yeah. And that's why I said love.
Well, when people allow you to see that.
Yeah, but it happens accidentally sometimes, doesn't it? Like I do it, I let it go, you know.
Yeah.
There's always an opportunity to see beneath all those.
So is it like the vulnerability?
I think that's
a really good one. Love it. What's your favorite quality in yourself?
I mean, first ball out of the bag, just going to go back on that last, because it's the last thing that's happened. Allowing myself to be vulnerable.
Great.
I'll go with that.
And I think like we talk about it a lot, but I think that quality really, it takes you a long way as an actor. I think that ability to allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think it takes you such a long way.
I think it takes you a long way as a human being. I think I really balk at the idea of, not that you were expressing this necessarily, or that there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But the idea that it should take you a long way as an actor, along up a ladder or whatever. But
I just didn't mean it to be definitive.
No.
I didn't want it to be, do you know what I mean? I think it's like, it contributes a lot.
It does.
I think.
It really does.
To the quality of your work.
Yeah.
And as any artist, I think. I think vulnerability is when we look at a great painting, especially, 20th century work or more contemporary work, when we can really see the vulnerability, when we can really see the artist, I think that's when I'm moved, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not about me really, is it? Right, here's a fun one. If I opened your YouTube, Instagram or TikTok account, what would be the first suggested video?
Parkour, probably.
Parkour.
I've got a scar on my leg where from one of my failed parkour attempts, and I really like jumping on things.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at it, but I really admire people who are great at jumping off and on.
Oh my God, let's go to a parkour gym.
Oh, yeah,
I'd actually genuinely be up for it. I've been talking about it for ages.
Oh,
Let's do it. Where you can fall and not hurt yourself.
Let's do it.
Let's do that.
Yeah. That's great.
What book would you like to reread? But I mean, like, if you could.
Oh, okay, great. I'd say immediately. Like, the book I'd like to reread right now is a book by Kate Hardy. I think it's really new. It's not out yet. It's coming out. This is where we live. Where I live. This is where we live. I think it's called Kate Hardy. A book coming out, and I suppose I thought of it because we talked about vulnerability. I'm a goldfish. Like, the only thing I can talk about is what happened 5 seconds ago. Katie Hardy's book, though, as an artist, she's expressed something from her vulnerability in such a big way, in such a, you know, peeling layers of skin off to go here, pulling back those masks to go, this is where I'm at, or this is where I was at, or this is part of me. It's not. It's also a work of fiction, but there's a lot of truth in it, and that I'd like to reread that at some point. I read it very quickly.
How did you read it before it came out?
Oh, she gave me what do you call it? I guess a pre-published copy.
Oh yeah, like a manuscript.
Yeah, she handed it to me, and I was like, great. And that's quite weighty when someone hands you either a book they've written or you're like, and then you know them. You're like, I gotta read your book. Oh, no.
Yeah, I love that. People ask me to read a lot of scripts, and I really like it. It's just finding the time to do it for me.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I mean, I find it quite a weighty responsibility, and then you're like, you know, I'm going. Someone told me the other day the only way to greet an actor off stage, having seen their show, is that was amazing. And they were like, that is the only way to do it.
I can't do that.
No, right. I get that. But I also get that that's the only thing you want as an actor.
Yeah.
You don't need anyone going, hi, or that was interesting, or any of the like clever things you can say to avoid saying something brilliant. Just be like, that was brilliant. And I sort of get where they're coming from. Anyway, well, we don't have time to analyze
that's
that.
so tricky, but that's a really fun one.
Well, say it. What use is it?
Really
Otherwise, it's about
one.
you, isn't it? It's not about them. It's like support them in their work. If they're close to you, you can either, and they're at a point where it's useful, either in previews, then you can maybe offer one or two things later if you think it's useful, or, you know, later on at the end of the run, when they've jaded by it or they're over it and they don't feel so sensitive, you can go, I didn't like that so much or whatever. But if you you come in and start being like critical of the show or certainly of them, then it's terrible. So, and I've always been one, because I'm quite thinky about it.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, it's interesting. And you want to say something, or you're thinking this isn't quite right. As often theatre seems to like rankle, and you think there's a better way to have done it. And like, but they're the ones that spent 6 or 4 weeks of their life on it. So I get it's amazing. Anyway, all of this to say, when someone hands you a script or a book of theirs, I find it a weighty thing, because you've got to go away and spend the time looking at it and then come back
and critique.
And really, well, or not critique. You can give them some useful steers, but
why did they ask you to read it? And why? And I guess, like, why do they ask you what you think after a show?
Why do they ask you what you think? Because you've been vulnerable.
Because they just want you to.
Well, in both cases, you've been vulnerable. We talked about this. This was a link from coming out of vulnerability. So you are vulnerable. You've put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You've done something that's very brave, whether that's get on stage in front of a bunch of people who stare at you, or write a book, particularly if it's coming from any point in your personal life, which it is, because it's always personal. It's always, it's always there. It's always your life. However, it's being transmuted by the paint or whatever. And you share that in the world, then that already is a great thing. It's the same with the actor, and you work with actors in the actors' yard. If they get up and they participate, if you're there participating, it's already great.
Yeah.
You've already taken part. You've already done what a lot of people can't, and you're also getting somewhere. Like, 100%. And therefore to come in with things that aren't in the first instance just an applause.
Yeah.
I think.
But I think there's a difference between saying like you were amazing and saying like thank you so much for doing that. Do you know what I mean? And I think that you're right. I think that sharing is being vulnerable and allowing yourself to share something artistically with something is the important thing, and that's the thing that should be applauded. But I don't think you should. Like for me, I think of any artist is probably their biggest critic anyway. So for me, asking somebody like, "How was that for you?" or like, "How did you feel about that?" they're going to give you a much more critical answer than you would have ever perceived anyway. So for me, I'm kind of like. It's much more about going. I thought it was great. I thought this was great. I thought that was great, and all those responses to the things that they feel really insecure about. You know what I mean? Rather than being like a kind of like wash. That was amazing. But that's just I think that personal approach. And I just have a problem with being like, I don't want to lie to anyone, you know. And so I think that like criticism in the right circumstances, in the right environment is useful. I completely agree with you. After a show, not the right time. If you ever want to criticize somebody, it's the wrong time after a show. I totally agree with you there. Ben Lambert, if you weren't an actor, what career path would you like to take a stab at?
Take a stab at? Well, I think as an actor, you do like, because you play different careers.
Yeah.
And then you spend a lot of time not on set or in the theatre, working, whatever, you do go, what else could I do?
Yeah.
And you get to my age, you go, well, maybe too late.
It's never too late.
Never too late.
Never too late.
Footballer?
Reckon?
Yeah, pro.
Nice. Pro footballer. Brilliant.
No, not really. Definitely not that.
You're not a footballer?
No.
Do you like football?
Not really.
Nah,
Don't
me
watch
neither,
it, don't
really.
play it. Volleyball, I like volleyball. I wouldn't like to be a professional volleyball player. Yeah, I fantasize about writer, about, writing novels. I'd like to be a therapist, maybe, a guru, a prophet. Are those jobs?
Pick one.
Can you be I'll
Pick
be a
one.
prophet.
Okay,
I'd
great.
like to be a prophet. Yeah. Tom Cruise? Could I be Tom Cruise?
You can't be Tom Cruise. He's an actor. He's an actor.
I went to an ad. I know you wanted one. I went to an ad casting once, and they said in the ad casting, they were like, one of those ad castings where they're like, they want to get to know you, and they ask you questions rather than getting you to like do the thing. And they go, so what kind of actor do you want to be? And like, I think it might have even said I was quite young, but I wasn't that young. I was like in my mid-20s. When you grow up, what kind of actor do you want to be?
Yeah.
And I was like, me? And they were like, no. I mean, like Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt. I was like, I don't.
Yeah.
Who do you want to be?
Did you get the job?
I don't know if anyone got the job. The ad casting was a complete mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not get into that territory.
Oh, that story even. Don't have time.
No, it's a good story. People seem to struggle with this one, right? I've asked it a few times. People really struggle off the bat. What's a line from a film that you'll remember forever?
Oh, there's so many. I watched Jurassic Park so many times. It wasn't even a kid, was I? A proper kid. I don't know how old I was, but there's lots.
So what's the one from Jurassic Park?
The one. He didn't say the magic word.
That is a really good one.
Word.
Yeah, that's a great one. On Dennis's computer.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Please. Samuel Jackson wipes the table off.
Okay, you might like this one. If in some mystical ceremony you were transformed into an animal, what would it be? And so it's that this isn't you choosing. You've just kind of wandered into this ceremony, and so it's kind of like, what animal do you think represents the essence of who you are?
Well, I'm watching a lot of children's cartoons right now.
Yeah.
So I saw a little fire lizard, but I don't know. That's just the goldfish brain in me that's going back to the most recent thing.
I could buy lizard.
An ex-girlfriend used to call me a weasel. That could be my innate thing. I do some shamanic work sometimes.
Yeah.
And the shamanic work's always quite, my animals there are, I actually don't know if I want to share them. They feel like they're my private.
I mean, like mantra kind of territory.
Shamanic journey. You go.
As in, like, you wouldn't share a mantra. You wouldn't share the animals.
Yeah. Although it's always interesting with shamanic work that nobody really chooses. People always choose eagles and bears, and no one ever chooses like woodlouse and like.
To be honest, I think that's the essence of the question that I'm asking. Is like, what would the animal be?
Yeah.
So if you can't say, then you can't say. That's amazing.
It's a need to know basis.
Whoa!
I've got it in my head.
Yeah, it's like you're almost the perfect person to ask and the worst person to ask.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn. Great. And the final one. This can be as deep or not as deep as you want it to be. But if upon your departure from this world,
I just think it might be quicker if I think of an answer before you ask the question, because every time you ask a question, I'm too slow.
I can just cut.
So if I just say ice cream, would that work?
It wouldn't.
Okay, ask the question.
I mean, it could do. People will be pondering over it for years. The question is, if upon your departure from this world, the whole world happened to be listening, what would you want them to know?
That's like epitaph stuff. That's like, famous last words. That's like, I want it to be really weighty and profound. So even if we sat here for like 24 hours and I went away and scribbled what I wanted to know. Well,
ice cream.
Yeah, ice cream. Ice cream would be fine. Ice cream would be good. It's full of joy, particularly vegan ice cream.
Vegan.
Dairy ice cream, maybe a little less joy.
So, yeah.
Just,
for all involved in the process of
I don't know. Maybe the cashews scream when you pluck them from the cashew tree. But the cows...
Do they come in like a bean pod? Like cashews?
As far as I know, they just come in a plastic bag from the shop. I don't know if they like bag them up out the back. Or
someone's laying them.
I don't know where cashews come from.
Yeah.
But they don't...
The cashew bird.
They don't come from the udders of a cashew bird.
Anyway, I think we've come to the end of the time that we have together.
Okay, can I read a poem?
Actor Ben Lambert. No, you can read your CV.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Love you, bro.
Love you, man.
If you're an actor in London and you're looking for somewhere to play and stay fresh, keep your skills sharp, then head over to theactorsyard.com and check out what we do. We'd love to hear from you.